How's it going, YouTube? Coming at you today with another video, and today, guys, what I bring to you is the Nationals review. Now, honestly, Nationals is just such a blast, and I appreciate each and every one of you for coming up and saying hello, and then being able to talk to all the other YouTubers as well, and just meeting everyone. It was just such a blast, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Honestly, like, going to events is the best thing ever. It's so much fun being able to play, and then even if you don't do that well, going to like side events and then hanging out with everyone, like, you just can't trade that for anything. It's such an amazing time. So thank you all so much for just making this community what it is, because it's honestly just, I don't know what I would do without Yu-Gi-Oh! Honestly, it's just so much fun, and I get reminded of that every single time that I interact with my community, every time that I go to an event. It's just such a blast. So thank you so much. So if you haven't already checked out my sponsors, definitely go over to Imperium Duels and Dragon Shield, check them out, and then let's hop right on into the content today. So the first thing that I just want to say is I got my Flame Wingman signed by Jaden. It was super cool. I've already got to have my Red Eyes signed by Joey, who is my favorite character, and now I got my Flame Wingman signed by Jaden. Super, super cool. And then the character duel that they put on at Nats was honestly amazing. If you didn't already see it, definitely go back in the VOD of Nats, because that was insane. That was super cool. And then honestly, it was so like surreal too, and like an anime type moment to see like DPE get summoned. Like it was just amazing, you know, because like we all saw that card and we're like, wow, this card's insane. But like, could you imagine if that card is like actually in the show? It's pretty nuts. So for me, I just had so much nostalgia, and then also just like hearing the you know, get your game on in person and whatnot. It's so cool. It was so cool. So definitely one of the neatest thing that I have now is my Flaming Man signed by Jaden. Super, super cool. The next thing is I was on Team Cody's Angels for the 3v3. This was awesome. I was with Distant Coder and Cody Angeloff. It was such a cool time. This was a very fun event after the main event too. So I'm very thankful for them being my teammates, and this was honestly just another one of those things that was just such a blast to play in. So I actually played Dragon Link. This was my Nats list. A lot of people thought I was on Striker, so this was pretty cool. Playing Dragon Link was honestly just one of those things where I practiced the deck now for like 2 months, so I felt really confident going into the event. There was one round that I lost really hard to time, which was unfortunate, and then the other round I got outplayed really hard. So this was something where Dragon Link was just so strong for the event, though. It was so good. Looking back now, I would have played Illegal Knight, I think, because there was 3 situations where I opened up the Rite of Armiser, and then I opened up the White Dragon Wyvern Burster, and then I didn't have anything else to do, so there was no like dark attributes in my graveyard to like banish. So if I could have just activated Right, got into Fateful, and then pitched Illegal Knight, and that was 3 times that it came up at Nats, and like before that it's come up several times. So I think if I did play Dragon moving forward, I would definitely end up playing Illegal Knight, because that was really important to have. I sideboarded Mystic Mine, and I thought that that was really cool because of the fact that a lot of people had no idea that that was even close to being in my sideboard, because most people expected it from like Drytron, but not from Dragon. So there was a moment where my opponent, they went Hulk Dagda, and then I opened up Droplet Mine, and I was like, mine? And then they set their Scythe, and they tagged out their Hulk into Wonder, and then I was like, oh, cool. Summon Souls, get rid of mine, draw Quick Launch, and I was like, wow, this is broken. So it was pretty cool. Also, Sloth on the side is insane. I didn't get to play against any Despia, sadly, even though that's like my worst matchup. I thought that Sloth was really cool, because if they set Albaz against you to like contact your board, you can tag out into Sloth if you bounce your own boot sector, and then they can't contact your board, which is pretty insane. Also, Appaloosa came up a ton. Appaloosa in this deck is actually just really insane. I also felt like I just played out of my mind this weekend. Like, there was one moment where, like, my hand was super awkward. It wasn't, like, bad, but I, like, got the read that my opponent had, like, a Veiler. And it was just, like, the way that they kept stopping me when I was playing, and they were, like, looking at my board, they were, like, looking at my grave. And then I was like, they have some kind of interruption. I feel like it's a Veiler. And so I was like, how do I do this play and make it worth something here, like make myself be able to be in a winning position? So like my opponent had 2 monsters on the board, and I was like, okay, I hard open Boot Sector, and I also have a way to get into Hulk. So I went to Hulk after getting my Tracer in the graveyard, and I was like, okay, if I let them negate Hulk here, and just like summon it early, because I could have waited on Hulk and then did like the bigger play later on and maybe played into Rock. I was like, I'm gonna let them negate my Hulk because there's no way that they don't, right? Like if you go Kagari, add something back, like they're going to negate Kagari 100%. So like you go for your Hulk play, and then they bailey you, which is exactly what happened. And I put Boot Sector on the field, and I was like, boot some deck Tracer from the graveyard because you have another monster than me. And it was just game from there. It was the craziest play around for Valor, and it was super cool. Because like sometimes like you literally just have to put cards on the board fully knowing that you're going to get negated on them, because it just baits out the negation that you need. So at that point, I was like, all right, cool. I have 2 zones, summoned the Tracer back, go Striker Dragon. I was able to get the other dragon in my hand on the board, so then I could go ahead and do the Pisky play and get into Borland. So it was pretty nice, and it's something that I definitely recommend if you are in a situation where things aren't going that well or your hand might be a little awkward. Try to think about where you can allow your opponent to negate you, and then also be able to establish a board through that. Because there's also a time, even yesterday, where I didn't have Tracer, so I had to read that my opponent had Nibiru as well, because that time they were really looking at like my grave, their grave, and then they were asking me like, how many cards do you have in hand? And I was like, there's no way you don't have Rock. And so I didn't have Tracer, but I knew that Heretic Seal hurt, so I summoned Heretic Seal and I went pass, and they Nibiru'd me on my Heretic Seal, and I was like, alright, cool, summon Avzarauder from my deck, I have token on board, make Dark, add Tracer, full combo. So there's so many things that I did yesterday just to like really just play out of my mind, which was really cool. Also, Nibiru in the main deck was one of the craziest things you could have done all weekend. Honestly, a lot of people just didn't respect it, so that was really nice. That card is cracked, and so there's a while where it just wasn't that good, but I definitely recommend just putting it in the main deck now. Of course, in 2 weeks we have Splite format, so it won't be that good because of the fact that the Gigantic can shut off the Nibiru, but it's still something as far as right now goes that you should be having it somewhere in your main deck. The next thing is that there was 7 different decks in top 8. The only deck that had 2 was Dragon Link, so that's pretty cool too. Half the event was Dragon Link, by the way. Half of the event, that's not even exaggerating, there was 1,800 people. There was like 900 people on Dragon Link. Everywhere you turned, there was a Dragon player. It was crazy. But yeah, 7 different decks in top 8. And that's what we were talking about too. This format was so hard to prepare for in this Nationals because of the fact that there's just so many different decks that have a viable option at top. So again, in the top 8, there was 7 different decks, which is kind of crazy. Which leads me into my next point is, where were they? And that comes with Despia and Flandres. So there was 1 Despia and 1 Flandres in the top 8, granted. But if you looked around the room, both of these decks just really weren't there, which is pretty crazy. There was a lot of other types of decks, and there was a lot of Marincess even that I saw, but like I just didn't really see much Flandres and much Despia. And I feel like there's a couple reasons for that. If there was a heavier showing of Sword Soul, or an expected heavier showing of Sword Soul, then that just has an insane matchup against Flandres, and usually is just really free for that deck. So that's where I could see maybe Flandres was just lesser of an option for this event. Whereas the same thing goes with like the Despia deck, where we've talked about before how Sword Soul just has an amazing matchup against it. And a lot of people are just already citing things like the D barriers and crows. So it just inherently makes the Despia matchup a lot harder to play with because of the fact that the deck's already pretty mid. So it's kind of really hard to do well with these decks when there's already so many things going against them. But they did manage to get a spot for both of the decks in the top 8. So that's definitely notable. But I just want to let you know that it was very less likely to play against Flandres or Despia at the event. The next thing I want to talk about is what were the most represented decks, and that's going to be your P.U.N.K Synchro, not Therian, your Marincess, and then your Dragon. These decks were literally just everywhere at the event. Like every single table that you went to, it was pretty wild, honestly. So this is something that was really cool because I definitely played Dragon this weekend because I definitely found that that was going to be the best deck, if not the better deck. And so that was really neat. But there was something that P.U.N.K Synchro was doing differently at Nats, and we'll talk about that in a later slide. So the next thing is, what do we do with these? And so Mystic Mine and Anti-Spell are both cards that are very oppressive in this game. And so Anti-Spell it's very similar to IO. It's not the same thing, but it almost is in a sense because of the fact that even as we saw in the finals, if you have a deck that can put up negation, even like 2 negates and then flip anti-spell, it might as well be IO at that point. So it's pretty insane for the fact that even a deck like Sword Soul being able to just like kill the next turn too, it's pretty wild because of the fact that the second that anti-spell is flipped, like you can't even put in twins for it because like at that point you have to open up like exactly twin droplet because not even Dark Ruler really saves you because they flip this in the standby phase. So anti-spell is pretty insane. There's a lot of people right now calling for it to get banned, so I don't really know if that's actually going to happen, but I could probably see this just because of the fact that once a combo deck takes off and then you see the anti-spell flipped, it doesn't matter what kind of cards you put in to like shut down the deck. I would say either we need to see anti-spell banned or we need to see red reboot to 3. One of the two to be able to shut down this card, because we also don't have like an MST or a Cosmic that can actually go spell speed 4, and I feel like that'd even be a really cool support card just to get for like dealing with floodgates. So I think that's something that we can definitely see happening in the future. But as far as these two cards go, they're pretty unhealthy for the game. I feel like both of these cards could rightfully be banned. It's just one of those things where I really am interested to see which one, or if not both, that they hit, because they both have very good logic to get hit for, just because of the fact that Mystic Mine is just really impressive and you just literally have to draw the out because not even your monsters can go ahead and clear it. And then also the anti-spell just being one of those things where once it's behind negation, there's just nothing that you really can do about it. And the fact that you can't even just like set your cards and then use them on the following turn, the fact that they have to be set for like a whole turn is pretty insane. And honestly, if both of them got banned, I wouldn't be mad. So the cool thing that the P.U.N.K Synchro deck was doing now was they realized that Dark Ruler No More was like the biggest problem, right? And so the whole theory behind it was that a lot of people were on Dark Ruler over Droplet. Well, if this is the case, what a lot of people started doing was they would summon Baron, and then they would summon Dagda. They would trigger the Dagda to go ahead and set Scythe. They'd go Baron pop Scythe, and then summon the Scythe off the Baron in the standby phase. So this played around the Dark Ruler. And that's why P.U.N.K Synchro was doing so insane this weekend. Also, big shoutouts to Goated in my Discord for getting top 32 at Nationals. You are insane, and I'm so proud of you. Good job, man. That was awesome. So that was really cool. And, you know, P.U.N.K Adventure, that deck was really strong this weekend. So that's something that we definitely saw a lot of. And seeing the standby phase Scythe Lock was definitely a very smart way to go ahead and play around that Dark Ruler. So I said this a week ago, and Ghost Ogre was very popular this weekend. It was in 2 out of 4 of the top 4 decks, and this card put in work this weekend. I was watching a lot of people lose to this card. It was very unexpected for many, and this was just such a good option for the weekend. So also looking ahead, we have Splite format coming up here in about 2 weeks. I know that I have a regional on like the 6th, so I'm already getting rid of my Dragon Link deck, and I'm already going to be picking up both of these just to make sure that I have them. And yeah, one of these are going to be the new deck, so we'll figure it out. We're going to do a lot of testing over the next 2 weeks, and we will definitely be deciding which one we're about to play for this regional. So I think that's going to be really cool. If you haven't already checked out my Discord, Twitch, and Twitter, definitely go ahead and check them out in the links in the description below. Also, if you want a coaching session over at Metafy, definitely go ahead, check it out, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you all so much.